So obviously my goal is to have one of them players. That would probably be the tip of the iceberg, get a player into the first team. And then obviously get him playing first team or get him representing the country. That would probably be an achievement up there with the Highland League title and that. Yeah, maybe one day I'll get one more Scottish Cup goal, or even pull on the Buckie top in a Legends game or something just for one game. That would be the ideal. That would be the goal.
Hello and welcome to the Highland League podcast. I'm your host, John McAngus, and this week's guest is former Brora, Fort William and Buckie Thistle striker, John McLeod. In this interview, he talks about his favourite Scottish Cup memories, being in a Buckie strike force that netted 99 goals in one season, his struggles in football, and much more. If you're new to listen to the podcast, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to keep up to date with all the latest episodes. Hope you enjoy this interview. What would you say are your earliest memories of playing football?
I'd probably go back to when I lived up in Firshill. My debut I probably made was with Firshill Axe. And at the time, my three uncles were all playing for them, and my stepdad at the time. So I remember used getting picked up by my stepdad just in the street. He'd be strolling into games and he'd be listening to 50 Cent and all that. I think the debut I made was probably when I was 15 into adult football, and we were playing, I think it was Mid-Lerg at the time, in the Highland Amateur Cup. And one of my uncles, he whipped in the corner and I somehow scored a header. At 15, I was absolutely delighted, but ever since then, I was sort of, because I was that young, I was just sort of playing. I was sort of goalkeeper, like warming up the goalkeeper every time, and wasn't really playing because obviously the age. So I sort of dropped the division to a team called Dunnery Workshops, where one of my uncles went to as well, which is that was obviously Division 2 at the time, but it was really fun. And actually, probably that year was where I just turned 16, and that's probably my first sort of adult football, really. That's the first memories of adult football.
Yeah, so being 15, like, how did you cope with the physicality of it?
Definitely just got knocked about. there was no strength for me anyway. But no, it was probably forced more because of living up in Firshill and Hoggarth. There wasn't. If you're in Inverness, you've got Clark, Elgin, Ross County, Cali. There's a massive gulf on ability in clubs. So up there, it was a case of, I think you played up to under 16s, and then it was Wick Academy under 18s or adult football.
Yeah, so I noticed you were at Wick Academy under 19s. How was that? And
it was really strange because it was quite cliquey before, where if you're from Firshill, it was almost frowned upon to be in the Wick Academy squad. Just obviously back in that time. So there was only me and one other boy. It was going through for under 19s, a boy called Andrew Richardson. And we were going through for games on Sundays, which was good. And it's quite funny because obviously still to this day, I moved obviously down to Inverness, and a couple of my pals actually played in the game where we beat Clark 5-1. And I don't let them live it down. So there was a boy, Niall McNiven, and a boy, Serge. They both came up, and we turned them over. That was my debut for Wick Academy under 18s or 19s it was, and I scored off the bench. But then obviously when we returned down the way I think we got beat 6-0.
Fair's fair.
But I only talk about the one up the road.
Yeah, we'll edit out the one you lost. So in terms of obviously you went on to play for like Alness and Muir Vord. How was that kind of standard of football, would you say?
Again, it was a hard time for me because I came down to Inverness when I was just 17, left school, and Wick Academy actually set me up to play for Clark under 18s or under 19s at the time. And it was under John Beaton and Gary Davidson, both absolutely incredible. It's probably the best year of football I've probably had. We didn't do well in the Scottish Cup, but we won all the sort of local caps. We won the sort of playoff between the North and the East. And then we went over to Minnesota and won the cup over in Minnesota. So nearly a clean sweep with them all. But that side was incredible. And Dave Mackay was obviously in charge of the first team at the time. And quite a lot of us went from 19s to first team that's next season. We went into obviously pre-season. It was fine. It was going fine. We had a lot of injuries, like Big Gary Ross and that was all injured in our first game of the season, which you obviously never want, is Brock away. You're just dreading it straight away. And I remember going down, and obviously I didn't expect to start because obviously just come up from the 19s, and obviously Gary Ross is speaking to you and the rest are speaking to you, and you're like, you're going to be starting today. I said, how's that? He said, I'm not fit. I said, nah, surely not. By the time we'd sort of pulled in, I think it was boy Davy Watson, Neil Gibb, David Clark, all from Cali, like dropping out from Cali. So we had a very good young squad, and we went down there and we drew 1-1, and I think it was the first time Clark had ever got points down at the Brock away. And I think at the time, and I've always searched for it, I can never find it. I think it was either the paper or online used to do remember the team of the week. So I somehow managed to, I didn't score that day, it was Davy Watson, but I managed to squeeze into the team of the week just from my performance. I remember being up top, I think Robbie Duncanson was up top, and he'd sort of banged in 4, and another striker had banged in probably 5, and I'm sitting up top with no goals, and I was like, no way. And I've always looked for it, and I can't find it anywhere, so I'm gutted I never had that.
Was that in the P&J, yeah?
I think it was. I can't remember where it was, but they always had a star man of the day, and then it was the sort of starting 11 into the team of the week. On from that, we had a couple of poor results. Still quite a young team, still not sort of, I would say, gelled. We went up to Golspie in the Scottish Cup when they were playing North Cali, and we actually got knocked out of the Scottish Cup. And I think it was maybe a game later, Dave Mackay sort of got pushed out. So I think we're about 7-8 games into the season, and Ian Polworth's come in, just sort of new ideas, new manager. He'd taken in obviously good players with him. Daisy Ross came back, Tuke, Gordy Moe came back, Scotty Kell came back. Like the players was incredible, like all the experience they'd had. And I remember we were doing like sort of almost felt like a mini pre-season again, sort of a wee bit into the season. And Scotty Kell will laugh about it, but we were doing obviously laps, so like a 400-metre track. He completed it, but he was probably like 7 laps behind everyone. And then obviously we came to the game at the weekend, and this is obviously where I sort of lost interest in football a wee bit. Obviously I'd thought I'd been playing well. New manager with new ideas, came in with experienced players. We played Lossy at home, and I was on the bench. And boys like Scotty and all that went straight into the team. It was hard to argue because we won 11-0 that day. But at the time, obviously we were playing 3 up top. And I remember the last sub being a left back going up top as like a left winger. I said, gee whiz, I'm not well thought of here. So me being me at that time, I hated training, hated obviously everything. So I just walked out, which was probably a bad mistake, which led me to obviously going North Cali. Dave Mackay took over Dingwall Thistle. So it took probably about 6 months to sort of get out of my contract released and to be able to play again. So it was quite a long period where 100%, obviously looking back over, obviously further on in my career, it is a regret. I didn't stick it out and I didn't push on to be the level I should have been. But confidence is always low. I've never been a confident person. It's just a case of like playing football for enjoyment, really. So I sort of lost that and gained that back at Dingwall Thistle, which was quite good timing. But then the North Cali at the time, standard was brilliant. Great teams around Muirvard. Muirvard had a good team. Ballantor had a good team. Ferzo had a good team. Falkirk had a good team. It was such a competitive league. And I spent 2 seasons there, and I remember the first season we were good. I think we won the cup, and then second season everything sort of clicked again. I was flying. I think Maxie was up at Brora at the time, and he kept phoning me before games. Are you coming up to Brora yet? I said, no, I enjoy football. Like, I was lazy. I didn't push myself enough. I didn't like training. Didn't train. So Dingwall Thistle, I had, which was silly. I had the luxury of not training and just playing games. But I remember, obviously, I think it was the second season, I think I hit about 33, 34 goals. And we missed out in the league, last game of the season. We were playing Galsby, and it was quite funny. Obviously, we've got the ref, we've got the linesman, and I remember in the box, and Sean Kerr's playing for Galsby at the time, and big Neil Mackay's come up for the corner, and he's just laughing. Sean Kerr's like, "I'm going to pull you down. You're going to get a penalty." So right enough, Sean Kerr pulls him down. Ref doesn't spot it. Linesman doesn't spot it. They go up the other end and miss an open net. It was just incredible. But obviously, it was that tight. We drew 0-0 and lost the title in the last game of the season. But obviously, we had a game. I think it was up in Boner, and I knew I was flying. I knew I was like top goal scorer. And we had the guy that I worked with, John McLeod, was a ref at the time. I went up to Boner and I was thinking, right, I need to score a hat trick today. And I've gone in and out of two defenders, gone into the box, and the defenders tripped me. I was like, gee whiz. It's like, still more penalty. John's come along and booked me for diving. I'm never scoring goals here. So I finished with 2, and I remember getting the invite for the end of season awards. And I was thinking, brilliant, I must have got the top goal scorer. So I went up to the awards up in, it was Galsby, no, it was Dornoch at the time. And I was sitting down, and they started obviously with the Young Player of the Year, and then they did the top goal scorer. I was like, brilliant. Pulled my seat out ready to get the golden boot, which I've always loved. And the boy Mark Nichol got it, and I was like, gee, how did I miss out on that? I says, what am I even doing here? He ended up getting it because they doubled up his goals, because they doubled up a game at the end of the season to finish the season. So I think he scored 4 in one game and got it doubled up to 8 because it was a double header. I thought, no way. So I always thought it was 2 goals ahead of him. And as I was sitting, I was thinking, what am I even doing here? I thought I was a golden boot. And then I ended up getting player of the season, which was pretty scary actually, when you're playing with so many good players across, obviously, the whole division and obviously in your own team.
So who were the kind of the standout players in that team?
We had quite a lot of good players. So it was actually quite good. Neil Mackay was in our nets, obviously quite experienced. Dave Mackay was playing centre back with Stephen McLean, champ. He'd obviously played well in Highland League. We had a boy, Colin McLean, a boy called Coco. He was at Nairn for a while. And then going forward was probably more, I would say, sort of higher level amateur players. But we had a boy, Babs Craig Monroe, David Murray, Marty McAllister. We just had so many good players throughout the whole squad. And obviously in the wings we had Gary Urquhart, Andrew Miller. I felt like it was probably one of the best teams I've played in over my footballing years. Just defence, obviously we didn't concede many goals and we always scored loads, but there was so much experience in the whole squad.
Yeah, so how important was that time playing in the North Caledonian League in terms of getting your confidence back and in terms of scoring goals consistently? I
think it was obviously across the seasons, it was the enjoyment of playing against so many good players again, playing at a level I felt was obviously comfortable. Highland League, obviously, and everyone will probably say it at different levels, Highland League's a massive commitment based on the travel. And obviously when we get to Fort William, we're obviously travelling to Inverness to go to Fraserburgh or Tariff or for Martin or Wick, and you're thinking you're genuinely now, that's probably 14, 15-hour days for them. So it was difficult, whereas North Cali, obviously Orkneys came into the league, but they came in after, obviously I'd moved away from the league, but your furthest trips was Thurso, Halkirk, and then Boner at the time, so it wasn't, and Fort William were in it as well actually. But they weren't bad trips from Inverness. It's 2 hours. It's not like all day. But no, there was good teams throughout the whole division.
Later on, you moved to Fort William. How did that move come about?
Yeah, so strangely, it's probably work related again. I got a season. I didn't really get a full season up at Alness. I moved up to Alness, and I think I played 10 to 12 games. I was working every second Saturday, so I sort of sort of committed to work, so Saturdays wasn't really an option. Then I'd sort of floated about just amateur league. My father-in-law started up a team called Curry House, just a local Indian that sponsored us for the 5-6 seasons, and he sort of managed it for the first couple of seasons. Then ultimately I ended up managing for a couple of seasons, and just it was probably back to where I'd said my commitment was poor. It was just that freedom of turning up to football and just sort of enjoying a kick-about with your almost friends and just work people, with no commitment of travel or no commitment to training. But then I'll say throughout playing that, Callum McLeod was obviously in charge, and I think he had at the time Ali Ewan and Alan Gray Spud, who's obviously taking the manager's job now. They were in it for it, and it was coming. I think it was the end of the season. I can't remember the season, but I remember getting asked for to play a trialist game away to Rothes, and I think it was a Wednesday night, so I was delighted. Like, no training, just turn up for a game of football. And they were like, I think they were short at the time, and that was the season they were pushing. I think that was the best season they finished in the league. I can't remember, it was 12th. And I think there was 4 games left. And they were saying, just come along, just enjoy the last 2 games, just play trialists. I was like, yeah, why not? So I went down to Rothes, and I took, 2 of my mates came and played as well from the Curry House team, which I was quite proud of, because obviously running an amateur team and having 3 boys going into the Highland League all at the same time. My mate Ross McRae, he ended up playing right mid, and he'd never played there before. And he could have had a hat-trick. It was weird. He just ended up in the box the whole time, but because he was a defender, he just didn't know how to finish. And then my other mate Richard Talls, who played a few more seasons for William Manstrathspey, he was playing centre-back with Andrew Hardwick at the time. And that night they were just brilliant together, such a good pairing. But we beat Rothes 4-0, and I scored a hat-trick, and 2 of the goals were just like wonder goals, and a penalty I hit really well into the top corner. So from then they were like, oh yeah, come down, come again. So we played, I think it was Losses, was our second game, and we were away to Lossie, and I think it was 1-1, but I scored again. So I was flying at the time. I was feeling good. I was thinking, maybe I should go back to this level. But again, I still had the commitment to the Saturdays at work. And then it was Devonville at home down the fort. And I remember, I think it was chairman at the time, Stuart, came in and he says, right, boys, double win bonus today, because I think if we won that game, it was the highest position or highest points he'd had. So I'm looking at my mate Richard, and I was just like, double win bonus, Richard. He said, we don't get it though. I was like, God's sake. But I think in the first half, I don't score headers. For being 6'2", I was just useless in the air, but I scored a header and I scored a quality volley in the first half, and I scored another 2, and I was thinking, gee whiz, it's not as, at the time I thought, it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be, because obviously at that time Devonville were really good. But we ended up, I think the keeper, Robin Harvey, he got injured in the first half, and our defender Fogo, who'd obviously played years there, he ended up in net. And we ended up winning that game as well though. So I think there was one more game after it, but I'd played my 3 trialist games, and they said, you'd have to sign for that one. So I didn't travel for that one, but it was good to be a sort of part of that sort of season. And following on from that, I think Callum stepped back a wee bit. A really nice guy, brilliant. But Ali Ewan sort of took the the reins, and he was at me all summer with Kevin. Kevin Monroe helped him. He's up at Brora now. Both lovely guys. Spud was there as well, and we had such a good squad from the season before. Nairn came in and sort of picked sort of 2 or 3 of our players. Kenny, Callum, I think Hardwick at the time. So we'd sort of lost sort of 3 very good players, but we still had local boys like Quiggy and all that. It was still brilliant. So we still had a very, very strong squad. And I thought, I'll go for it this season. And then the first 2 games of the season, I think most of the boys will tell you, I think we went to Wick away, got beat 9-1 or 9-2. Then we had Forest away, and I think we got beat, I think it was another 9 or 10. I was just thinking, what have I done? Duncan Jones was just running the show, pinging balls in behind. Robbie Duncan was flying. It was just, I was thinking, maybe this isn't my level. Still hated training, still didn't do sort of a full pre-season. I was thinking, what's going on here? And then I got in a groove again and was scoring goals. I think we played Brora at home, and what we'd always found is, I think every team that came down to play Fort William always just assumed worst team in the league. They're obviously shipping 9-10 goals.
Yeah,
you can sort of rest a couple of boys, and you sort of seen it most games. Like locals would come down, Brora would come down, like all the big teams would come down. You'd see the better players on the bench, and you're thinking, you got a chance here, to shock them.
Mm-hmm.
We just never ever managed it. But we won. I think we played. I think it was Preston Pans in the Scottish Cup, and it was our first ever victory in the Scottish Cup. We were down there, and I think I remember looking at the odds, and it was something silly like 16-1. And you're just laughing. You're like, how are we always like this bad? And we went down. I think we won 3-2, but we were 3-0 up or 3-1 up, and we strolled the game. We were playing so well. And from then, I think we played a couple of big games, and we were competing. We just weren't getting the points, so it was sort of frustrating. Played Brora at home. Sort of they rested boys, but the squad depth at that time was just scary good. And I remember it was Grant Monroe and Scotty Houston that was playing at the back, and I was thinking, I'm not even going to get a sniff here. Ended up, I think the score finished 5-3. I scored a hat-trick and I missed a penalty. But then obviously from that, Brora sort of put in a couple of sort of inquiries. Buckie had sort of asked as well. There was a couple of teams sort of starting to ask questions. And obviously when you're playing football and this thing's happening, it throws you a wee bit. You sort of, you lose a wee bit of focus. And it's, I remember, I think we were away to Strathspey, I think 2 weeks after it all come out. And I think we got beat 2-1. It was probably just one of the worst performances I've had in that spell. And I remember Ali Ewan just absolutely hammering me after the game. I was like, gee, I said, I'm like one player, and it's obviously my fault for the defeat, but it was probably deserved. But at the time, it's just wasn't that confident anyway. So it was just more, it felt like it was sort of an attack, which it was looking back on it, it was the right attack to make, because obviously we just lost to Strathspey, who was obviously, we were the bottom two at the time. We obviously ended up miles behind them. So it was one we had to win. I spoke to, obviously I was allowed to speak to Brora after that. And I met Richie and Kettlewell at the time, just down at the local hotel. And they're genuinely brilliant guys, and obviously they've had massive careers in football. So it went two ways, because I knew my fitness levels wasn't even close to like a Highland League player. I knew it was sort of, my game wasn't what a top team sort of needed, like holding up a ball or winning headers, like fighting hard in games. It was just not, I've never been able to do that. I've just been technically not a great player. But it was the idea of training with boys like obviously Dale Gillespie, Gavin Morrison, Will Ketts was training, Richie was training, Grant was there. I think, and this is obviously a once in a lifetime sort of experience. It's like it edged it. I was thinking I have to do it. And I remember in training, boys were just zinging balls into me, and everyone else is taking great touches and just passing it away. My touch is hitting my knee, my shin, going all over the shop. I just knew straight away I was miles out of my comfort zone. But my debut was against Buckie, and I think some places put it down as a double, but I'll claim a hat trick. The last goal was like an own goal, but it was definitely a shot from me, but it was probably going wide. But I'll take a hat trick for my debut.
So going back to your time at Fort William, how did you find obviously you went into the team and they'd had their highest ever finish, and then obviously it was a terrible season after that. How did you cope with those heavy defeats?
Yeah, it was really hard. I think most of the boys would say the same. I think the hardest thing for Fort William players over the years has been commitment through a season. So I felt like the first two defeats sort of scared off some players. And then you've got the rotation of having like not a completely new team, but you've got 3-4 new faces each week. And I remember we were meeting at the retail park for going through to Nairn away. And Nairn were flying at the time. Connor Geffins was banging in goals. Robbie, they had obviously Webby at the back, Antel and Nets with Mo at the back as well. They had such a good team. Toshi was flying. Easter was flying. They were all such a good team. And I remember waiting for the bus. It's actually quite funny because a boy walks off the bus and he's obviously straight away lights up a fag. and I said, "How are you getting on?" He said, "Not bad, yourself." I said, "Not bad, not bad." He says, "What are you doing?" He said, "Just quickly run to the shop." He goes, "How come?" He says, "I've got no goalie gloves." I goes, "What do you mean you got no goalie gloves?" He says, "Well, I'm in Nets today." And I said, "I need to go buy goalie gloves. I need to buy football boots." There's a boy, he absolutely laugh about it. It's the boy Ryan Hunter, good keeper. And this is obviously the first time I've seen him. He's walking off with a fag in his mouth and he's running away to DW Sports to buy goalie gloves. So, what hope have we got today? And I actually scored a hat-trick that day. And he actually had a really good game, but I think it was beat 5-3, 6-3. Connor Geffin scored 5, I think, that day. But he was just thinking, this is obviously what we were playing with. But some of the players, don't get it wrong, that came in were brilliant. Some of the players, I think, again, didn't like the commitment. Found it obviously hard with, I would say, probably the standard. I think it was that season after progressing the Scottish Cup, we played, I think it was Cove Rangers, and the game had been rearranged, I think it was 4 or 5 times. And then it ended up having to be played this Monday night down in Fort, and the pitch was not waterlogged, but it was close to being waterlogged. Turned up to the game, there's like deer walking across the pitch. Yeah. And you're just thinking, what is going on here? This is football. But I think it was Andreas, he'll hate me saying it, but I think it was like 5 minutes into the game, he's got the wrong side of the ball and giving away a penalty. And you're thinking 5 minutes into the game, you're not fit. Like, obviously for William, most teams will say against a big team, stay compact, stay in the game as long as possible. In 5 minutes, we're 1-0 down. You're thinking, what are you supposed to do here? But I think in the end we weren't too bad. I think it was 3-0, but it was defeats was hard because it felt like it was constant defeats, and it never felt like, I don't think we ever played really bad. We were creating enough chances. Yeah, we're scoring goals, but I could have probably had a good 5, 6, 7 more than I had finished with before my move. But it's just them. It's this games. Like, I think we played locals and probably had 3 chances and probably only scored 1, where I should have been scoring probably all 3. But it was tough. I think I got the move. I think I moved up to Brora. I think it was maybe October time. I think I left on 16 goals. I think it was about 22 goals in the basis. I think it was 17 games. But I remember at the end of that season, Ali Ewan obviously phoned me and said, I've got a trophy for you. I goes, what for? Because obviously been gone for the full, like nearly the full season. He's like, top goal scorer. Brilliant.
Were you I'm not sure if you were there when there was the guy called his surname was Lewandowski and he was goalkeeper, or was it
he was there in spells.
Yeah, was he? Yeah,
Robert.
Yeah, because it was so bizarre, because I remember seeing it on the team sheet for the first time ever. I was like, goalkeeper Lewandowski.
I know, he wasn't a goal scorer anyway.
So we'll go back to, so obviously you moved to Brora and you said it was such a step up in terms of training and stuff. What were kind of the players like in terms of your Grant Monroes and stuff? What were they like to play alongside and deal with?
They were brilliant. Genuinely, obviously the experience they'd had. Obviously, me going in, I felt like I was obviously naive. I wasn't fit. It was a tough environment because majority of these boys, even Dales and Gavs, these boys have come from full-time football and played at the highest level. And then even going to Brora at that time, they were winning trophies or winning leagues. It was like it was massive for probably my development and understanding of probably the game. But now Grant, he was brilliant. He was really good. He obviously took the manager's job the season after, but it was a sort of summer of turmoil where they went through sort of 2 to 3 managers before Grant took it. And I just asked to get away because I didn't enjoy it towards the end of it. I'd gone in, there was no issues, scored obviously 2 or 3 in the first game. I think went away to Keith, scored 2. I was scoring goals, but at the time you'd had boys like Paul Brindle, Stephen Mackay, all injured at the time. So I think I scored 5 or 6 games in a row. I felt like I was flying, but not fit. And then obviously these boys get fit, and obviously these are unbelievable Highland League players. So I'd obviously then sort of drop into the bench. Then I played Cove Rangers. I think it was when they were obviously the top team at the time, and at the time I think we were a couple of points behind them. We had to win it, and this was obviously before Christmas. It was like a must-win game. It was like, and they came up to Brora, and it was probably my best game in a Brora shirt. And I didn't score, but just my work rate, I played really well. I definitely felt like obviously through the first, I think it was about 8 or 9 games, I was scoring goals, but because of so many good players behind you, you're always going to get them chances. But I wasn't probably playing that well or stand out. But then obviously it was hard to stand out in a team where you got 14, 15 unbelievable players. So, but the Cove Rangers game, I think it would go on me and Xander up top, and we just obviously ran ourselves into the ground and obviously caused problems. I think we won the game 2-1 at the time, but definitely felt good coming away from the game. And I think it was a few games after, I think we played, I think it was Nairn. So at this stage, obviously, all the sort of strikers were coming back into fitness and that. So I sort of found myself on the bench more and more, understandably, because obviously they were miles ahead of me. But we played Nairn. It was over the festive period, and I remember they came up, they beat us up in Brora, and obviously at the stage, because obviously how well Cove's been playing all season, it was one of those ones where you'd had to win basically every game from now to the end of the season to win the title. And I think I got 15, maybe 20 minutes. I remember coming on, and obviously it was a battle anyway. You'd come into a game, it was sort of such high paced and that, and I think all I'd had in the whole 20 minutes was probably one shot, got cleared off the line. And I remember going in after the game and got absolutely slaughtered. Said I didn't do enough when I came off the bench for 20 minutes. And generally, when you've got no confidence as it is, and you know you're probably miles behind the level that they're at, that sort of hit hard. To the stage where I then obviously was just constantly on the bench. Sort of, I would say Richie probably lost confidence in myself. But then to be blamed for playing 20 minutes in a game where we've been beat a course of 90 minutes and we've all played bad. It was almost one of those ones where he's just picked out the weakest in the dressing room and just slaughtered him, prove a point. But I didn't feel it was a good point to be made. But so yeah, sort of find myself on the bench. Then we were away for Martin in the cup, and I remember we were doing a warm up on this pitch. It was unplayable. It was just like a bog. It was just waterlogged. It was honestly the muddiest pitch I've ever seen. And the game went ahead, and we were I think it was 5-3 down, and came off the bench probably 10 minutes to go. I can't mind who got it. We got it back to 5-4, and then Colin Williamson scored a goal with probably seconds to go. So it's 5-5, and I remember Joe Mullins. He got injured during the 90, and he's tried to hobble on, but he's just obviously too badly hurt. And then we're talking obviously before extra time, what do we do? And like, genuinely, obviously I'm looking around. I played right wing back because I think we had like 4 strikers in the park trying to get back in this game. And I think I've made probably three runs up the line, and I think I chased Barber back 3 times, and that was me. I was absolutely blown. I'd only been on the park 10 minutes. I was wanting off already. And I just remember being in the sort of huddle, and you're looking at like the 10 players around you, and you're thinking, I put my hands up and says, I'm the worst in the park, I'll go next. I just knew everyone was fitness wise, player wise, they were just so much better than me. But Joe Mann was just laughing, and he said, don't worry about it, just go in. And then I think they obviously for Martin straight away just sensed it, and they were shooting from everywhere. I was thinking, I'm going to get absolutely bombarded. And I think out of the 30 minutes, I had probably 2 or 3 comfortable catches and a couple of easy shots. And I said, that's the easiest 30 minutes. Obviously playing the nets. And we're obviously stepping up to the penalty shoot. And I'm not obviously being a keeper. I'd messed about in goals. Like I could comfortably play 90 minutes in any team in nets and just have a laugh. But I remember, I'm just trying to remember. I think it was Gary Wood probably took the first penalty, he's put it in top corner, and I've gone the wrong way. And like, even if I went the right way, I'm not even getting close. And then the next 2, I think Ando, he stepped up and put it right side net, and I've gone the right way, and I'm still miles away from it. I was like, oh my god. But thankfully, obviously, we've got Dale, Gav, and we've got good players setting up as well. So I think that it was quite funny now, because obviously he was such a good goal scorer, but at the time, Neil Gold was the one that missed the only penalty of the game. If I'd gone the right way and sort of saved it, probably not in the corner like the rest, but obviously that was the only penalty. It was missed in the shootout. So I ended up probably being a Brora hero for being a goalkeeper and not a striker.
Were you ever tempted to switch positions after that?
No, it was actually weird, because obviously then the next round of the cup, I think it was the semis, I can't remember who came up, but we were playing in Brora. And then Stephen Martin was in nets, and he was a penalty hero. So I was a penalty hero in the quarters. He was a penalty hero in the semis. And then Joe plays injured in the final. And then obviously Nairn were probably the better team in the final. And then Joe's penalty hero in the final. So we've won the cup with obviously 3 different keepers putting us through the round. But obviously after that for Martin game, just been out of favour. Again, I'd sort of switched back to the mentality of when I was 19 and sort of got dropped out of Clark, and I just hated football again. So just sort of, but I'm probably bad to say, I just didn't turn up. I just wasn't interested in going, didn't enjoy training, just hated football again. So,
yeah. Do you think you were prepared enough for the amount of pressure that was expected in that Brora team, in terms of the demands and stuff on players to be on it basically like non-stop?
Not even close. Probably, I think I mentioned it, fitness levels, I just knew I wasn't ready. But it's one of those, obviously, once in a lifetime, you're playing with professional footballers. It's played obviously against amazing players and still trying to play football. But from probably the other side of the game, I probably still had the mentality which is poor of an amateur player, where you sort of almost wanted to just turn up for football, like sort of games and that. So yeah, I was not, probably as an all-round player, wasn't even close. Don't get me wrong, I scored goals, I still had a good ratio up there, but not close to the dedication that boys like Stephen Mackay and obviously boys that played professional football would be putting in. Obviously Richie as a manager and the player. Like, these are boys that's played against the best players sort of in Scottish football, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so looking back at it, say you'd went to Brora like later on in your career, you know, when you were older, do you think you would have been better off, or what?
I think Probably not, because I think the team, they're such a good team anyway. I think I probably, if anything, if I changed anything after my time at Dingwall, I'd probably rather have gone into Brora then, when they weren't obviously the top team. They were in amongst the bottom half with obviously at the time like academies, and I probably prefer to have been in that team where everyone was obviously fighting, and obviously it wasn't that winning mentality where it was must win every game, and you were winning every game. But yeah, it was tricky, but later on in my career, probably obviously the biggest probably regret is not getting more seasons at Buckie, if anything.
So in terms, you mentioned you kind of struggled with confidence. How did you cope with that going forward? Obviously you moved on to Buckie. What do you think changed?
I think if anything, obviously moving to Buckie was, I wouldn't say a relief because obviously I enjoyed football, but I ended up with obviously Sam Urquhart signed in the summer that season as well, and obviously Sam Urquhart I knew him well. Kevin Fraser was there, James Fraser was there, and it almost brought me back to like the enjoyment side of football where you were playing with mates.
Yeah.
Whereas Brora was obviously boys that are great players and obviously played at the top level, so it wasn't as if I'd sort of gone up there knowing I had like 2-3 mates in the dressing room where I could sort of like be in a group or that. But Buckie seemed to be going down there. It was again, it's probably the fear of Spider as well. You just didn't want to be on the wrong side of him. So I think if anything, that was probably my first pre-season that I'd actually. And even if you speak to him, Mara, Loser, Lewis, even in pre-season, they genuinely thought they signed a donkey. Honestly, running, I hated it. Training, I hated it. I was just genuinely probably the worst trainer. So, but I would say that was partially my best pre-season I've had. Obviously, I would say 9 years. And then the first pre-season game of the season, we played Inverness City, which was obviously mates that I sort of played with for a while. And I think it was annoying because Spider was away at a wedding, or Spider was missing the game, so Loser and Mara was in charge with Lewis. And I remember scoring, I think it was in 34 seconds. And that was it. Just goals, just rained goals after that. I think I finished pre-season. I think I probably played an average 4.5 games and I'd hit 14 goals. And it was quite funny because obviously one of the games we played Buckie Rovers, who was obviously the local derby, and it was always like highly contested. It was always almost like a fight. And we had Ross Salmon at the time. He played in nets for them, and obviously boys being boys, they was like, "Oh yeah, clean sheet tonight. You're not scoring." And that stuff doesn't bother me, but I was just laughing, and then ended up scoring 5. And then Shawnee Woods' mate was playing for Goldie, and he was honestly speaking to him. He'll just tell you his nightmares of me the whole time, just from that game. Just I was on flames. I was so just confidence was slowly coming back. Still to this day, I would never say I was a good footballer. I just felt like I was always a goal scorer.
Why do you think like that in terms of, you're just a goal scorer?
I think you obviously look around the leagues, you look around the players that have obviously, a great example is Cammy Keefe. Cammy Keefe's done it 14, 15 years consecutive, banging in goals, record goals, Highland League, record goals for Martin, record goals, Keefe. It's like scary numbers. So when you compare yourself to that, or Goldie, absolutely smashing goals in, you're looking at the best players in the Highland League, scorers wise, Stephen Mackay, and you're thinking, or Connor Giffins, Robbie Dunkson, I've not had that sort of consecutively. So I've not done it year after year after year. Yeah, I did it the first season. I sort of continued it into the second season. I did it partially at Brora without being fully fit. I'd partially done it at Fort William, partially fit. I think to be that level of player, your commitment, I think we talked about at the start, is your commitment has to be all or nothing. You're training twice a week. You're travelling every Saturday. you're working Monday to Friday as it is. You're sort of you're losing a lot of like time. But for them, their all-round game was like just miles ahead of what I was. Their hold-up, they could score any type of goal. I couldn't head the ball. I could just, I'm blind, but my hold-up play was terrible. I'd always say, like, if anybody asked me what sort of player were you, I would always say I was a trier. I'd give you all I had. If it wasn't good enough, it's basically come off. That's all I had. But I would always give you sort of everything, sort of thing.
Yeah. So do you think having, in terms of that front three, you were at Buckie with, you had Chris Angus, Sam Urquhart. How was that key, having different players with different strengths in terms of yourself, Urquhart, and because you're different kind of players, I would say.
It was funny because obviously the season before I went to Buckie, they also had good players, and they'd finished, I don't know, they had a terrible finish that season. I think they were either 9th, 10th, or 11th. It was quite low. And I remember going into Buckie and I didn't ever think it was like a big player. So I was looking, and obviously Kai Ross was there. James Fraser was playing as a sort of striker. Andy Lowe was there. And obviously my first thing is, obviously I've got 3 good strikers in front of me I've got to compete with. And obviously Chris Angus was either a striker or a winger. So you're looking and you're thinking, again, you've got the same challenges as before, where make or break. Am I committed enough to go against, obviously, play well? But Kai Ross ended up with a bad injury. Andy Lowe ended up with a bad injury in his knee. So everything was almost not falling into place. But I think obviously hitting the ground running was a massive thing as well. Spider sort of installed, I think, fear almost into everyone, where we had the winning mentality. There was a hunger amongst the whole squad, and I think probably looking back, you're probably looking at quite a young squad on average for a team that's won the league. And everyone was just, honestly, we were just running over teams that were just like good Highland League teams, experienced teams, and we were just running over them. It was just bizarre. It was just mad. Yeah,
what was it like being in that? Because I saw quite a lot of games that season. It's just like no team seemed to be able to stop you.
No, I was looking back. I've got all the paper cutouts. I used to store all the paper cutouts from every game, and I've still got them. And there always seemed to be, I think Spider probably mentioned it before, it was like an 11-minute spell where we'd end up scoring 3 goals in a game. And it's probably the best. It wasn't a comfortable, say, 3 goals and then that's the game's done. You'd get your 3 goals, it felt more comfortable, but then because teams were chasing you down, you were then hitting 7s, 8s, 9s, you were hitting silly scores because you were that comfortable. I remember, I think we had, was it Brora at home, and everyone said we'd sort of played the easy teams. Obviously we're on this run, I think it was 12 games, 1 in a row, it's going to come to an end. Got Brora, and Brora came down on Wednesday night and we'd actually beat them 5-0. And again, I think there was an 11-minute period, we scored 3. And they were brilliant at the time. And you're thinking, that's like unbelievable. Then I'm confident we went to Huntly on a Wednesday night again and we played Cove. And I think again we had 11 minutes spell, we scored 3 and this was in the first half. I think I got to half time and I was thinking, I've just played about 180 minutes here. I feel like I've absolutely blown myself. And then the game ends up finished. We won that one 4-3. But that whole season, we felt like, I think defensively, we were strong. But if we weren't strong, I felt like we could outscore any team in the league.
Yeah, in terms of the football that you're playing that season as a team, it was brilliant to watch, and it just seemed like every time you went forward, you were going to score. There was like no, which I feel like is the sort of football fans want to watch. I know sometimes it can be a bit of a slog 'cause you're battling out with certain teams, but that's the sort of football that's like entertaining, gets people off here. And I would say probably, would it be fair to say that team's probably the best Buckie team in recent times, you would say, or up there with it?
Yeah, I think obviously previous manager and Spider and everyone would probably agree. I think the teams that won the league before, I think Spider's mentioned it in the papers before, they were expected to win the league. they had the best team in the league. They had the best players in the league. They were obviously expected to go win the league, and they were winning the leagues, and it was obviously a big squad. I don't think we were ever expected to even come close. Spider's obviously first season was he wanted to break into the top 4. So obviously, start of the season, you're absolutely flying, and that never changed though. It wasn't a case of, even with 5-6 games to go, it was never a case of we're going to win the league. We were still sort of, the aim was still getting into this, obviously, the top, because obviously the season before, it was just obviously so poor. But obviously that kept us grounded as well at the same time.
Give some insight of what Spider's like as a manager, and speak a bit about the fear factor. He's
an absolute lunatic. Yeah, honestly, turning up, if you were late, it was the end of the world. You just, obviously, nobody wanted to be late. Nobody wanted to do anything wrong. He was an angry man, but he got the best out of everyone. Even in games, you're scoring a goal and you're going back to the centre circle. No matter what goal it was, I think I hit 5 at Strathspey, and I'm going back to the centre circle, and all you can hear is John, John, John. And you're trying to ignore him because you're thinking you're just going to absolutely hammered, and he just shouts more. Just every time you scored, just go get more. So it was even scoring 5 or 4, he was never ever happy. He was always wanting more. So he would always keep going, which was obviously good as well.
We'll switch to, obviously you have a lot of wonderful memories from the Scottish Cup. One of the games that stood out for me in terms of for yourself was the 6-2 win over Gretna. What do you remember about that game?
So the week before was frustrating. They obviously took the lead, sat in, sort of frustrated us. I honestly didn't think we were getting a goal back. But then another day, it could have been 6. We were dominating, but we just couldn't score. And then obviously we went down the road. We stayed the night down the road. Actually, it was obviously our first away trip to Scottish Cup, and it was just different. I remember taking the clippers and doing my hair before the game, and just a 0 or a 1 on the sides, and just left this horrible tuft of hair on the top. And it wasn't even straight or nothing. It was like Morelos. It's just a terrible haircut. But we went in the morning. We actually went along to Brian. Went to Brian's sort of. He had a wee training ground. He's got a wee sort of football academy down the road, and we just sort of walked through set plays and that, and then we went back to the hotel for a breakfast. And we're out obviously just. After breakfast, just chilling out, and we're sitting. There's a horse. This is obviously completely off the radar, but there's a horse just sort of floating about, and we're feeding the apples, and we're all sort of just clapping at that. And obviously, I knew I just didn't click, but I was allergic to horses. So I'm sitting there, obviously petting this horse, and I obviously rubbed my eye. My eye doubled in size. I couldn't see out it. My eyes both my eyes had ballooned. I remember going inside, I was like, Spider, I can't see. And then obviously we're getting antihistamines and giving me everything. And obviously that was 3 hours before the game. We got to the stadium, we tried to warm up, and obviously my one eye was still all swollen up. I couldn't see out from her. So then I was obviously thinking, obviously, I couldn't have played. I was like, oh no. And started up front with Loser, and straight away we were just, I think we started the way we finished the last game. I felt like we should have been outside the first game, but didn't get there. And obviously we started just the same way. We knew, obviously, at that time we'd obviously worked on a lot of strengths and everything of us against their weaknesses and everything, because we'd obviously played in back-to-back weeks. And obviously first 10 minutes, I'd scored straight away. Assist from Andy Lowe, and then Andy Lowe takes a corner. I put one in off the bar, so we're 2-0 up, and it felt like we were cruising, and we could have kept going on. And then Stuart Taylor, I think just before half time, 40 minutes in, gets a straight red, and you're thinking, oh, right, what's going to happen now? Because we're down to 10 men, and obviously Scottish Cup, we're playing at Gretna's Park, it was quality. They scored after that, and then from kick-off, I remember we tried to go long and behind, I'd run behind it, got defended, and Kevin Fraser just picked up the ball and does what Kevin Fraser does and glides past, I think 4 boys, has a shot, keeper saves it, and I've put it in the back of the net. So you're obviously back to 3-1, and you think this is obviously we're playing 10 men, we're still going to struggle for this game. And that was probably one of the games where I'd probably played well at like all aspects of the game. Like my hold up was good. I remember in the corner I had like 2-3 boys kicking me, trying to get the ball off me, and they couldn't get the ball off me. Like because we were playing with 10 men, it just sort of it almost felt like beast mode. You just sort of changed to a different player. But then obviously ended up hitting another one, hit the 4th, and then the 5th one, obviously still disappointed because it wasn't in contention for goal of the round. I think the keeper for my 5th, and it's like that's brilliant. I got subbed off after that, and I remember, and I still to this day, it annoys me. I've put one of the match balls up my top, and I'm just walking about with it under my top, and one of their boys said, "What's that ball?" Was it just a match ball? So he's taken it off me, and then obviously it went in the paper. Obviously I didn't get the match ball for the day for playing the Scottish Cup. And then they've gone in the paper and said they're going to post one up. Still to this day, never received a match ball for that game.
So you're calling for them to send that ball.
I'm still absolutely gutted about that
one. No, they probably still use that football.
I know, there's no way that's moving. Yeah, so obviously after the back of that, we obviously great result, and then we ended up with Dunfermline in the next round of the Cup.
Yeah, so what was that like? I mean, that was a 5-3 game. What was that in terms of a step up, you know?
I think at the time, obviously no disrespect to Dunfermline, but we were flying. Like we were probably, every player in the squad was at the top of their game. We were probably on a different level, and we made a couple of mistakes. I think all 5 goals has probably come from our mistakes. So like I would say the golfing class has come from you're punished for your mistakes against better teams, which has always been the way. But throughout the game, I felt like we competed. We had the fans were incredible. They took up a good support. The place was just it was just bouncing. But yeah, they obviously gone 1-0 up. We've given away a penalty. Strikers going out the park, sort of away from goal. Ross Samuels just sort of caught him, but avoidable. And then we scored an own goal. Big Squisher's gone with the wrong leg, but all in all, everybody was unbelievable that day, and it wasn't to be. I had a couple of chances. I obviously only got the one. Chrissy got 2, but again, it didn't feel like there was a massive golfing class. Obviously, going into this following season, we played them again, and then there was a wee bit better. It felt a bit different. A sort of a wee bit more class about it.
Yeah. So how great is it to play in front of crowds like that?
It was funny because the start of the season, obviously the first game of the season, we had a good crowd for Clark at home, and I'd scored a double. Obviously, fans were buzzing straight away. I think for the first wee bit of the season, the crowds were. It was, I wouldn't say low, but the more and more we were winning, we seemed to be picking up bigger crowds. And I honestly think throughout the season, you're probably averaging 700 fans at home, and it was incredible. Like, obviously, everybody's just absolutely brilliant. It did spur you on because they were just constantly singing. And I think obviously one of the best days I experienced the fans, I think it was locals away in the Scottish Cup in the first round. I think we filled the far side. It was just all our fans. And even when they were turning up outside the stadium, you could hear them singing. You just think, what is going on? Like, this is just different. But they stuck with us throughout the whole season, and definitely I felt like that was one of the biggest points. It just made you enjoyed your football so much more when people appreciated it.
Yeah, so in terms of our big games, what was it like playing in like the Buckie kind of Devonvale derbies? They seem to always be entertaining, and there's always stuff happening at them.
The first one was a strange one. I remember it was funny actually. We were sitting off, and Inverness, we always had 2 cars going down. So Lewis would have a car, and then me or James Fraser was driving. And James has picked me up, so it's me, James, and Kev, and he's just filled up to go down the road, and it's just his mum's just got a new car, and we're going down the road, and like we were trying to go past people just to get down the road, and the car was almost like struggling. I remember, I think we got to outside Forest, and we'd actually pulled into a lay-by, and James was phoning his dad and saying, "Look, the car's not working. There's something wrong with the car." And we're like, he's like, "No, there's nothing wrong with the car. It's just new." What it was that he put a limiter on it for 55, so James wouldn't thrash it down the road. Oh. So we ended up being late to Denverville for the derby. We got absolutely slaughtered for it. But the first one obviously went to plan. I think at the time we were absolutely flying. I can't even remember what time it was. I can't remember who we just played. I think it was Brora on the Wednesday night. We beat them 5-0. And Dave Edwards was asking, "What do you think about the first derby?" And being sort of naive, I didn't really know Denverville that well at the time, but we went down there and turned them over 9-2. And we were just, obviously it just continued. We were just so strong. We were just outpowered them. But a couple of games, it was obviously physical, but I don't think they weren't close to us at the time. Further on in the seasons, I think they've competed better, but Buckie's still been probably too strong for them. Kevin Fraser, Sam McAngus, Chris Angus, that whole season, Shawnee Carroll, Craig Dorrit, Lewis, Squisher, you had a whole squad. It was just honestly unbelievable.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember posting something, this was like ages ago, at the time, just ahead of your playoff, and it was 99 goals between you, Sam Urquhart, and Chris Angus. And apparently at that time, it was more goals than Neymar or Messi. And
I've still got that cut out.
I remember posting that because I found that funny online, because I posted it online. We'll go back to win the league. Like, how great was that, and what do you remember about the celebrations?
Winning the league was a roller coaster, if I'm honest. Because as you remember, I think it was so our last 3 games of the season, we were midweek Fraserburgh away, Formartine away, and then Strathspey at home. And we just got beat by Huntly away. We got beat 1-0 in the 94th minute. And I think Cove had drawn with Tariff. So we had thought obviously the league was almost out of our control. And obviously, definitely when you've got that fixtures left, you're thinking Brock away and Formartine away, you're not getting much out of them too. But the Wednesday night, we went down to Brock away. We went 1-0 down. Boys, I can't even remember who it was. Johnson hit an absolute wonder volley from 40 yards. We defended a corner well, and it's just hit one. It's hit the top corner. It was like an incredible strike. In that team at the time, you'd had so many players that could just change a game. And that 45 minutes, that was probably the best I'd probably seen Chris Angus play. He just changed gear, and he was just flying, and he scored 2. And we went in at half time, and I think it was probably a bit of nerves, because I'd never played in sort of like a game with that much obviously riding on it. And I was being sick at half time. Couldn't control myself, and I was like, "Are you right to go back out?" And I went back out, and then I ended up scoring 2 in the second half. Played really well, but we'd gone down there, and I think we'd beaten 5-2. And it sort of just showed that we had that good a season. It was like, it was back on. And then Formartine went away, and I think we knew at that time, I think with the results, we had to get a minimum of a point. And we went there, and I've never seen Kevin Fraser kicked so many times in one game without boys getting booked. Ando and all that must have had, honestly, about 7 fouls on him without a booking. They just kicked him upside down. But that was the sort of season Kevin was having. Nobody was getting close to him. So it was the only way of stopping him was kicking him. But we ended up drawing that one 0-0. And there wasn't many chances. It was almost we just cancelled each other out. No, not like we went for a draw. Because I had a good chance at the end. Chrissy had a good chance. Sammy had a good chance. So we had good chances, but we just couldn't get the ball in the net. And then there's sort of the controversy over Wee-Kazi with his loan to Devonville.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we trained. It was either training or the game before we were on our way home, and we just found out about it. And it was that sort of sinking feeling of, you've gone the whole season, been the best team in the league, and just anything was out to get you. So thankfully, obviously, all went to plan, and obviously played Strathspey the last game of the season, and it was quite funny because I was getting, I obviously spoke to Brian really well at Strathspey, and based on obviously being obviously a coach and amateur and managing a team, because we played them in a friendly a couple of times. And I remember getting a phone call on this Friday night, and he said, "Have you got any players?" I was like, "How do you mean?" He said, "I'm short of players." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, last game of the season, nobody's obviously, everyone's, yourself just finished up." I was like, "Oh, gee whiz." And I was texting my mates, and I was like, "Oh, you want a game of football?" And that in the weekend, and my mate, who obviously I started mentioning at the start, Niall McNiven, from the Clark game, he ended up playing for them. And he's a striker, obviously, and I obviously played with him, and he sort of moved back to centre back, and they put him sort of centre defender midfielder, and Kevin Fraser just ran circles around him. So I felt bad for him, but obviously on the day, again, it was one of those games where I think we were 4-0. I think we were 4-0 up. And I hadn't scored, I hadn't had a shot. I was getting so frustrated because it was a title party and you're not involved. And I put one in the roof of the net, and I scored the next one. I felt a bit more relieved, but I used to get so frustrated coming off a game where I hadn't scored, or if I'd scored one, because I knew I'd probably had chances to score 2 and 3 in that game, and it was probably that side of the critical side where I was thinking each night I would go home and I would just replay all them chances, thinking what could I have done better. But I suppose in ways that's obviously why I scored so many goals.
Yeah, so in terms of celebrations, just how great was that, being part of a team winning a league?
Yeah, feeling was brilliant. I think obviously fans was incredible all season. Obviously quite fitting. Obviously we had, I think, over 1,000 for the last game of the season. It just almost became like a carnival atmosphere. Obviously going into the dressing room, it was just bonkers. I think one of Jay Ting, obviously unbelievable player as well, had a great season. One of his mates was up at the game, and I remember he was in the dressing room just celebrating with us all. And Bucky's dressing room is so small, it's just obviously there's a physio bed just in the middle. big Doris lifted up this boy and just like almost done like a suplex and put them through the table. The table's gone in pieces, boxes are flying everywhere. Honestly, that was a riot. I honestly think there was holes in the roof. It was madness. But off the back of that, obviously East Kilbride finished the season, I probably think 2-3 weeks before that. And then we've obviously gone partied Saturday night, didn't train on the Monday, trained on the Wednesday for the game on the Saturday. And it was a shame. I think obviously you can't change anything. It's obviously you've won the league title, you're in an experienced team who wasn't expected to win it, you've won it against all odds. I think at the start of the season, I think we were 66 or 80-1 to win the league. Yeah. One of my mates at work, he put a fiver on it and he was laughing all season. He's like, "Oh, you got to win it. And then he didn't even get a blooming chocolate out of it. But obviously we probably partied well and then gone on to the first leg. Probably almost, I wouldn't say naively, it was just almost like the hangover. We were sluggish from obviously the weekend from celebrating a league title. I think we drew that one 2-2. It was slow starting, we were 2 down and we got back in the game. And then we've gone down the week after and we've gone down bare bones. I think at the end of the season, I think Sammy did his knee ligaments against Fraser on the Wednesday night, played against Strathspey, all bandaged up. And we'd gone down, and I wouldn't say we'd had good squad depth, but we'd changed formation because we were that short in boys. Drew Copeland and Stuart Taylor, who was good wingers and good centre mid at the time, we ended up playing with them as wing backs because we were that short in boys, and we almost like just scraped 13th together. And they were a good side, but I think if you introduced them at the start, like middle of the season or when we were flying, I genuinely think we would have beat them.
Going back to the first game, obviously there's a lot of stuff happening. You had the thing with Spider, falling over or something, and then you had I think Chris Angus said someone was spitting at him or stuff. What kind of happened with that?
I thought it was so mixed. I think Chrissy's obviously gone into the box and slowed down. The boys ran into the background. We've got a penalty. We scored it. So it all kicked off from there. But I didn't see, obviously, the boys spitting at him. Obviously, with fingers crossed, somebody wouldn't do that because it's absolutely disgusting and it's vile. But because he's obviously an honest person, so he wouldn't be a person to lie. But I think the game was that heated. It was they had so many good players. I actually got on really well with most of the players, and obviously go down there again. I didn't really have many. Well, I had loads of battles, but the physical side wasn't my game. And I remember being at the end of season awards, and there was a couple of the boys came up to me. I think it was Biscuits, and I'm trying to remember. It was two of the boys from Lossy, centre backs, and they were saying to me, he said, "You just need to have that fight." I says, "I know," but I said, "I don't have that side in me." He said, "Yeah, but like we've knocked you about probably 3 games this season, just absolutely hammered you upside down, and you've not had any frustration. You just got on with it." And I remember laughing, and I was like, "Yeah, I know," but I said, "I know at the end of the day when I walk off the pitch and I've scored a hat-trick against you, I don't need to battle. Like I don't need to fight." And they were just laughing. But that was just sort of probably that was my opinion on it. Like Eric Watson, it was absolutely unbelievable to play against. I can't comfortably say I still speak to him now. He would hammer you off the ball. He would just hit up for a header, and you're getting an elbow or a head in the back of your head or the side of your head, and you just knew he would just any 50-50s. He was absolutely clattering you. But it was obviously the physical side, and you sort of had to deal with that. But I just knew my benefit was obviously running him in the corner or obviously scoring. So I never even got involved in that side. And there were so many players that sort of at that time was trying to rough you up. Mo Morrison was incredible for it. He'd hit you an elbow on the halfway line and the ball's not even in play. Gee whiz. Even Colin Williamson was just like smash you off the ball, and he's just like, what's going on here? But it's just obviously their way to try and stop you.
Yeah. Do you think these days with strikers they get too emotional too quickly in terms of reacting to stuff like that?
Yeah, it's so hard. I think I'm not saying obviously players have become softer. I wasn't strong. I wasn't physical. I was just skinny. So I think that battle. I think if you spoke to any defenders, they'd probably, even Sean Webb still says it today. He says you've run me ragged. I think 3-4 times that season. He says I've never played against a striker that like strong and powerful, but I didn't have that dirty side, so I didn't feel like I needed it. And even when you're going down playing the Brock away and Russell McBride's like hammering you upside down, it was one of those ones you sort of, it was like you accepted it. It was just, I'll say it. If I always felt like if you were getting into the position where they were able to smash you, it was your own fault because you're holding onto the ball too long, or you'd had a bad touch. Because if you were sharp enough, they wouldn't get close to you. So you sort of almost deserved it.
So in terms of going back to the East Coast Bride games, is that kind of one of your regrets in terms of, you know, on your best day, you know, Buckie would have got through and got the chance of potentially, you know, promotion? Yeah,
definitely. You'll speak to most of the players in this club. Everyone's ambition was to play at the highest level. Obviously, we experienced it. I think it was the season after we played a lot of the better teams, but obviously we experienced it against Dunfermline. We weren't a mile off. We competed really well. And then obviously that would have introduced the Elgin Buckie derby again. So, which obviously the fan, you see it every cup draw. You're just, the Buckie fans are shouting for that game against Elgin. It just never comes.
But moving on to the following season, obviously it was a bit more frustration. Obviously scored 15 goals, but then you started getting the injury problems. When was the first time that you started like feeling pain on your body in terms of?
It's probably throughout the season that we just had. It was like an ongoing thing. It was just towards the end of the season. I always felt like it was because I'd obviously done a proper pre-season. Obviously that season we played a silly amount of games. We'd finished obviously with the playoffs. So we had the two games in the playoffs, and I think it was like a 5-week break, and we're back in. And then in the cup we'd been drawn against, I'm sure it was Dundee United, Rafe Rovers, and Cowdenbeath. And that was obviously your group stage, and you're playing obviously 3 full-time teams and a part-time team over the space. So I think it was 10, 11 days, because it was Tuesday, Saturday. I think it was Wednesday, Saturday, or no, it was the opposite way. We finished on the Wednesday night against, I think it was Rafe, got beat 5-1, and then we rolled in straight into the season. So we're obviously finishing a season where you've played 50 odd games, and you've obviously done a pre-season again. You've played 3 obviously full-time teams, and we didn't do too badly against them either. Away to Dundee, we got beat 2-0. We're 1-0 down. Daniel Bell's actually had a wonder game, but we had chances to equalise, and then in the last 10 minutes we've obviously gone for the game to try and push, and we've been caught out on the counter attack. So we competed well against them. Dundee United, they'd sort of, I think it was 3-1, but they hit us for 3 goals in the first half and just sort of almost felt like they eased off it. Yeah. But these games was just so quick after a season you just had, so you didn't even feel like they'd had a break. It felt like, without feeling it, because obviously we'd at that time as well, we'd signed Stevie Ross in pre-season, so he'd obviously come in, and then obviously me, Chrissy and Stevie, it was after the 4 cup games, it wasn't a case of, I felt like I fell out of, not out of favour, it was almost a rotational between the 3 of us. I remember training, they were trying to change my game a wee bit, trying to hold up the play and like build it up a wee bit, so like changing the way I was playing, and it wasn't really working. But then obviously at the time Stevie was scoring, Chrissy was scoring, so I was falling like in and out of the squad. I think we beat Wick Academy 5-1. I think only played 15 minutes, and then the following week we played Brecon in I think it was the Aver Cup. Was it the Premier? Was there a second cup? Was it the Tea Cup? A Challenge Cup. So we had them, and they were a championship team at the time. And obviously the boys that obviously didn't play on the Saturday was obviously all starting on the Tuesday against Brecon, obviously the championship club. And we all played so well. Well, Kevin Fraser actually came off the bench and scored 2. We won the game 2-1 against obviously championship club. So again, we competed with one of the better teams. And then obviously the game after, we played for Martin, and then it was back to Chrissy and Stevie, and I'd only got 15 minutes again, so I was sort of in and out of the squad again. I think it was Keith the week after. Again, Chrissy Angus scored 4. I've come off the bench. I think they came off the bench. I think they just scored to make it 2-2, and then I'd scored a sort of back heel, made it 3-2 off the bench, and I was thinking, almost felt like, well, I ran to the fans just thinking, I keep getting put on the bench, I'm raging, but I'm not, obviously. I don't know, it was just a strange start to the season after you'd had such a good season. But I could understand it was obviously the rotation of 3 good players. We played Fort William. I was on the bench again, and it was 0-0. We hadn't had many shots. It was the strangest game. It was like they'd killed the space, and they were frustrating us, and we didn't have any shots. And there was 20 minutes to go. It was 0-0, and I came on. And my mate Richard Toz was playing at the back, and I took a touch in the box, and I've ripped one, and it's hit the side netting, and the fans cheered, like almost like it was a delight that we've had a shot. It was the weirdest thing ever. And then Shawnee Carroll, and then obviously the big Richard said, "What was that all about?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Obviously, maybe they thought I scored." And then Shawnee Carroll's clipped sort of 3 balls in behind. I've gone in behind, won a penalty, scored 2 and set up 2. So we ended up winning 5-0 with 20 minutes to go. But it was just, that almost felt like, even Spider said after the game, he finally turned up this season. So it felt like a wee sort of dig, like, where have you been sort of thing. But I don't know if it was just trying to change your game or trying to be something that you weren't. But then obviously the game after it, we played BSC Glasgow, and Scottish Cup seemed to be my thing. So I started that one, scored a hat-trick. But at that stage, obviously, it was going into the winter. I was still playing okay. I was went to Clark and I was injured, and I got like a physio. I went to the physio 2 nights before, got a rub, and then obviously played. Lasted 20 minutes, and again, I think I scored 2 and set up 2, and we were 4-0 up with 19 minutes gone. And it was that sort of mix of the season. We were just we were showing glimpses of the season before, but we were also finding ways to play against us or cancel us out. I think the last game we played was Brecon, again Scottish Cup 3rd round, and they were still in the championship, and we beat them 2-1 the first round. I scored 2 that day, but I think even watching back on the highlights, I've got a 1-on-1 and not taking the touch out of my body, and I've hit the keeper's legs rather than putting it in the net, and it's probably that. It's that chances that I look back on thinking that changes the game. Could have been round 4. I think round 4 that year was Brecon got Celtic, but I know the balls would have changed and it would have been different. But the game after was my last game, and we played Nairn away. It was just such a soft park, but they turned us over. We were 4-0 down in the first half. Got absolutely hammered at half time, and I scored in the second half. And I actually played well for getting beat 6-1. I remember after the game, I was walking up the stairs, and training was becoming harder. The recovery was becoming harder. And I remember not being able to walk up the stairs. And then I woke up in the morning, and I just felt like almost like around my torso was just all like frozen. And it sort of continued for I missed the training on Tuesday, and I obviously hadn't recovered by the Thursday. And I was thinking, what is going on here? And that was probably the last game. It was mid-November. But it was sort of, I would say, half a season I played, but I was still firing in the goals. And I think Stevie finished top goal scorer that season. I think he finished in 16 or 17 goals. He was only a couple of goals ahead. And then obviously I've started seeing the consultants, and obviously since then I've ended up with 3 hip operations. And unfortunately, obviously the procedures I've gone through is pretty similar to Andy Murray until his last operation. But the hip pain's not gone. My left's probably just as bad as it was. But I've been doing loads with the physio. Shawnee Webb's actually been my physio through private and then through NHS. So I've been really lucky. And he's always obviously helped me as best as he could. I've had cortisone injections in the hip joint, but doesn't seem to help, doesn't relieve the pain. But I've got to the stage where I've accepted the pain's never going anywhere. It's always going to be there. He's managed to get me to understand the limitations of going outside your comfort zone. So I've actually, touch wood, all going well. I've started running. I'm starting to doing a wee bit more. So maybe one day I'll get one more Scottish Cup goal, or even pull on the Buckie top in a Legends game or something, just for one game. That would be the ideal. That would be the goal.
Yeah. So in terms of do you know what caused that injury? No,
it was strange. The consultants were saying that I think it was something silly, like 75% of people have an impingement of the hip, but only 10% of people will go through life finding it or knowing it.
Yeah.
But as a kid, we lived in a street with 7 houses, and we had a farm, and the back garden was a football pitch with 2 11-a-side goals. And generally through my whole childhood, honestly, I think it was 8 hours a day of playing football. So I think as a kid, it probably just absolutely hammered my body. But I'm building up. I've done a lot. I'm still doing a lot with Shawnee Webb as well. I'm doing a lot of core stuff, doing a lot of short runs, and getting into the longer ones. So maybe I actually played in a Legends game at the end of the season for just a local team, Culloden amateur team. My mate at work, but he actually runs the team, and I scored a hat trick on that day. And we were laughing about it because they were taking centres, and I wasn't even making it back to the half because it was just that couldn't move. But the goal scoring's still there, so if I can get to semi movement, it might benefit someone. But I would love to play football again at some level.
Yeah. So in terms of looking back at your career, what are your kind of main highlights? I remember seeing when it was the Scottish Cup final, they had your name up on the screen, and a lot of people, Scott Davidson, when I spoke to him on the podcast, he says that's one of his targets, to get his name up like you up on the screen.
No way.
Yeah, he said that.
I'll need to listen back to that. Scotty's a legend. He's a good guy. No, definitely throughout obviously both seasons with Buckie, I wished I played more games because the whole club, I absolutely loved everyone at the club. Lynn, Shona, Sandra, they're absolute assets. They're absolutely incredible girls. They do so much for the club, but then so does a lot of other people that probably go unmentioned. But highlights is probably, obviously I was in the team of the season for the Scottish Cup 2 years in a row. I need to get them high, up on the wall, because that's incredible. Because you look at the team and you got Kieran Tierney and Josh Windass, and it's just got crazy players in around there. It's obviously top players. But obviously the Gretna day as well on the bus, they off the ball, and I keep meaning to get on a plaque because on the off the ball I was player of the day, and they were speaking about us on that, which was quite weird. And I remember them obviously played a song. They were obviously asking the listeners for a song, and it was "Get Out of My Cloud." I think it was. I can't remember if it was the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, but it was just because they said "Get out of my cloud." But I keep meaning to get that on a plaque and keep that for obviously show the kids when they're older. But highlights in football, unbelievable. I think some of the goals I scored. Like everyone would probably say, your natural goal scorer is probably a poacher, your 6-yard box. But strangely, I could score any goal. And obviously, my favourite goals is probably I've hit one into Joe Mallon on the Wednesday night in the Buckie, and it's ripped the roof of the net. One's into the top keepers in the Highland Leagues. Always been my favourites because they're that good, and even in playing against them defenders, it always feels that much better when you score against one of the an absolute legend of the game. Kevin Main scored 2 absolute crackers into him at Buckie. I hit a left foot volley in the first half. In the second half, I've hit one from 40 yards, and I've just volleyed it. And it's almost, obviously he'll tell you probably a different story. It's almost like that acceptance. You're thinking it's over, and it's like he's just jumped up, and he's not even made an attempt. It's just nestled right in the top corner. But those goals against such top players, they've always got an extra. Always feel extra special.
Who would you say is the best player you've played with and best player you've played against?
Best player I've played with, Kevy, Sam, Chrissy, on their day, unplayable. And I played North Scotland football. I was playing with Sam McKay and the boy Chris Murphy. Chris Murphy he disappeared. He went away, but they were incredible players as well. They were getting called up to the Scotland school squads at that time as well. But they were unbelievable. Xander and even Stephen Mackay. So many different players in different areas. And then players obviously playing against, I think the biggest ones is obviously scoring against defences. It's got likes of Sean Webb, Mo Morrison, Eric Watson, even DK. All these players, it's obviously made a living out of football. They're obviously always the best ones. I think Tariff Captain as well was always a hard one to play against. Bodden, such a physical player, but such a good defender as well. Kieran Adams as well. He was physical, win every header, but he had an unnatural pace about him. And I still message him to this day, and I'll send him pictures of us running together. I'm just laughing. I'm that's probably the one time I got past you. His lunges were that long. He'll say he could catch anybody. But no, playing against them players and obviously playing with so many good players, I was probably blessed because I didn't ever see myself as a top player. I just enjoyed scoring goals.
Do you feel now you're kind of retired from football? Obviously, you want to maybe go back at some point, depending. Do you feel like you kind of appreciate what you've done, kind of, and proud of what you've done over your career, or are you still like you were when you were playing, wanting to do more? And
I'm probably harsh on myself because I've probably played amateur league football for too long, if I'm honest. The boy, obviously, when we said about obviously all these boys that's made a career out of it, and Scotty's obviously said his ambition would be to be on that final team sheet, and that my genuine ambition, even when I was at Buckie, was to be the top goal scorer at Buckie. And if I was playing for long enough, my target would be to be hammering Cammy Keefe in that. Coming away from the season we won the league, I remember coming off after every game, and the first thing I was doing was checking how many Mitch Megison scored, how many Cammy Keefe scored, how many Goldie scored. It was just that I always wanted to outscore them because I always felt like a striker. You're never going to be that player that's running box to box. You're never going to be that player that's winning games, as in being a flair player and playing 90% on the ball, and that you're always going to be the one probably with the least touches, but probably the most important touches. But now I always came off thinking, I wonder how many they scored this weekend. and sometimes you're raging because you're coming off a Mitch was scoring a hat-trick or 4, then you got no way. But I think at the end of the season, I think it was actually Stuart Zone. It was actually probably second top goal scorer that season. He ended up being a striker and just absolutely hammering goals in. And I got worried towards the end of the season because I think I was stuck in a certain amount of goals, and I think all my goals are coming in the cups just now. I'm not getting many in the league. But no, I think I'm delighted. I've also got the Highland League medal. I've got the League Cup. I've got the League Cup medal. I've got is it Aberdeenshire Cup. I don't have a shield. I'm gutted about not having the shield. But as a player, you want to win everything. So I think there's a frustration that I won't be that player that scored 300-400 goals for one club. And the way I was playing it, I could have easily done it for probably 5-6 seasons if I stayed away from injury. But yeah, it's frustration. I'm delighted with the medals I've picked up. I'm delighted with the awards I've had. But you always want to achieve more, don't you? I think obviously with what I've done, I've also played at some really good clubs, well supported clubs, and I don't think I would have changed it. I don't think full-time football would have been for me. I didn't have the commitment to train or that. So if I had a better mentality from coming out of under 18s, it might have been a different story to know how far you would have gone. And I think that's the frustrating side of the football. You don't apply yourself, and you end up one day you're so injured and crippled at 30. So it's hard to take.
So on a positive note, in your new job with scouting for Ross County, how did that come about?
It was bizarre. I was doing, obviously through lockdown, obviously everybody was doing different things. Obviously with mobility, with being like standing up to watch football for 90 minutes, this obviously gives you pain. So at the stage I was like, I couldn't ever go into coaching. Buckie had always asked to come back and help with coaching, and obviously I was gutted and never, because I should have put more effort into it. But I was doing scouting courses online, and I absolutely loved it. Through playing football for so long, you sort of could pick up traits of players, and you could see who. I felt like I had a good eye for who was going to be a good player. And then at the time, there was no interest in doing anything. And I remember being on one of the courses, and I was sitting on the call, and somebody had mentioned that Ross County had I think it was 5 jobs for lead scouts going. And obviously my good friend Gordy Duffs, he's obviously head of the academy there, and we'd played at Buckie Thistle back in the day. So I remember messaging him. I just said, out of interest, I says, can I be the scout in Inverness? I said, I'm just doing the courses, I'd be interested in doing that side. And he says, yeah, of course. He said, pop through for a chat. And I remember going through, I think I've been in the stadium 3-4 times for chats, and Stevie Ferg was in for a chat one of the times, and we were sitting in the opposite side of the boardroom, and we're just sitting in, like, you're looking out in the stadium, and it's like glass fronted, and you're just looking at the pitch, and you say, this is unbelievable, what a setup. And you're having a chat about football, like just generally about football, and just chatting like we are now, and it was just such a buzz about it. And I remember he phoned me one day, and he was like, how do you feel about being the head of recruitment? I says, what do you mean? I said, I just want to be a scout and go to one game a week. He says, nah. He says, you know the area too well because you're from Thurso. You've obviously played down Buckie Way. He says, you know everywhere. You've got good contacts in football. You've obviously got good knowledge in football. He says, well, I don't mind. This is, but I says, I don't want to let you down, because I always feel like there's pressure in everything you do. You always feel like you can do better. And obviously, that's where confidence probably comes in. I probably should always do better. But I said, yeah, I'll go for it then. And then since then, it was hard at the start because we were starting a new sort of, it's been created, so it was new. All the sort of SPL clubs and sort of high up clubs had been forced to get a network. It was a new thing coming out from the SFA, so it was like a rollout. Every scout had to be at a certain level by the end of the year. And then it sort of just grew arms and legs. So at the time we were just looking for like lead scouts, Thurso or Caithness, Dingwall, sort of Rossshire, Inverness, Elgin, Aberdeen. But now obviously that's me. It's a year in already. I've got obviously Stevie Edwards up in Orkney, unbelievable. He's got his own football academy, and he does all the scouting on the island. He's got a couple of good contacts Shetland, a couple of good contacts Stornoway. You got Dave Mackay, who's obviously my manager at Clark. He's the scout in Rochester. I've got Gordon Clark up in Caithness. We've got one of the players' sons just kind of come on and help me in Inverness because I was covering like a lot of games in Inverness. We don't currently have anyone in Elgin. We had one, and just time. It takes up a lot of time because all games are obviously like night times, weekends. And then we've got 2 in Aberdeen. So I think I've got a scouting network of about 10 people under me, all feeding me data. So it's just, honestly, this last 2 weeks, it's just been mad. You feel like you finish your job and you're just starting a job again. But it's absolutely brilliant just being involved in football again.
Yeah, just how much talent is there out there that's been untapped, do you think, in terms of the Highlands?
Quite a lot. There's a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of... Obviously, I can understand that coaches don't want to lose their best players at any level. So you have a lot of challenges with coaches in different areas. You've got to almost jump through hoops to even be able to speak to them. I've never approached anyone without going to the club first. I just think it's almost honourable. This boy's maybe been developed by Clark, Malone, someone in and around the area. Just stepping on their toes is disrespect. So I've always done it with like the right way. But even then, some kids don't want to go to that level. And even on top of that, like kids have maybe had a bad experience before. We had a player come in, under 15s, had a bad experience previous, didn't want to go to that sort of level of football again. Managed to talk him round after watching him another couple of times. He came in, and he's probably arguably one of the better players in the academy just now at that level. And the challenges are hard. And then on top of that, you've got the distance of travel. Someone coming down from Caithness for training. Expectations is once a week, but then even then, once a week, they're leaving straight from school, coming straight down the road, not getting dinner, like not having a proper dinner. Then obviously they're training and travelling straight back up. It's a massive commitment, and you don't. Obviously, you've got to thank all those parents who obviously put this much commitment into obviously following a kid around all around obviously Scotland. But it's difficult. It's more difficult than you think. People seem to be more happy just sitting at the level they're at. Probably quite like me. But no, it's honestly it's so enjoyable. It's so enjoyable. It's even what I actually took the under-13s down in Livingston at the weekend, just because we had the 2 coaches were, one was away on international duty with Northern Ireland and one was doing a cycle bridge to bridge. So I went down the road for the 13s. The 15s got to play on the Tony Macaroni, which I was gutted about. But then obviously we were up at St Margaret's School. But even that experience of just, I don't think I'm a good coach, but I've had good experience in football. So even like being able to give them that experience and just try and coach that into the young kids, it felt brilliant.
Yeah. So you scouting for all like the younger kind of age group, trying to get them into the youth setup, or what kind of? Yes.
So I'm covering just now it'll be under 9s to under 18s. Under 9s and under 10s is pre-academy, so they're not on contracts. Under 11s upwards is all sort of contracts in in a club. But obviously you're scouting school festivals, you're scouting SFA festivals, you're just all over the place all the time. There's a good amount of games obviously around the area, and there's a good amount of festivals, which is good. Tommy Regan does a lot for the sort of the area with festivals and that. He's from Allness, but there's a lot of good people in the football. Kevin Fraser and James's dad, James Fraser, he does a lot with a club called Malone, and they've got incredible age groups through, and obviously great coaches and good setup with teams and that. So it's there's a lot of players out there. It's just obviously our academy's it's stepping on. It's been quite good. We've got just now coaching Gary Warren's just come in. He's obviously playing with Clark just now. Yeah. Great guy, so enthusiastic. And then you've got Carol Tremarco, You've got Billy Mackay helping under 14s with Ross Draper. You've got so many players with experience of Scottish caps and just winning big things. So as a player, there's coaches out with that. It's obviously just as good, Malcolm and all that. And Ryan Farquhar, they've got such a good academy just now. There's an excitement, there's a buzz. I'd be delighted going into that just now as a kid for training, but it's finding them people for it.
No, I'm glad you're buzzing because I can see it on your face. I mean, being involved in football, it must be amazing. Now it's like your kind of full-time job and you're getting to watch football and being part of Scottish football in a significant way.
Yeah, and you'll see it, obviously, the pride in the academy just now. Obviously, we've got 4 going into the first team. Boy Dylan Smith's obviously representing Scotland. And then he's obviously he came off the bench at 16 at Rangers. So obviously my goal is to have one of them players. That would probably be the tip of the iceberg, get a player into the first team. And then obviously get him playing first team or get him representing the country. That would probably be an achievement up there with the Highland League title on that.
Listening to the Highland League podcast. Hope you can join me next time for another interesting interview.